In this video, let's model this kind of a gun detail. This is great for the practice because it has many organic looking shapes, but it's still a hard surface object. So first of all, what you're gonna do is top of build poly draw node. So with this node, when you go inside, you can basically start drawing the topology. So when we started out, so let's just delete all of it, reset all edits. So if you do not have any geometry connected to this, all you have to do is just start drawing 4 points, and you see we have a polygon, and then just press middle mouse button, and you can see now we have one polygon that we can start making our shape. So what I want to do is actually think about where I want to bevel it. Since it's a kind of a round shape on top and also bottom, what I'm going to do is basically bevel this edge once we're gonna give it some sort of depth. So I want to create this polygon, first one, for how much I actually want to bevel it. So around here I want to bevel it. So now I just start drawing for the all of this shape, and also I want to think about how much I want to bevel it in here. So maybe somewhere in here, then just put it to the end like that. So for the edges, what you can do is start, let's say I select this, but you can see by default you want to create another polygon. But if you have this selection, just press on middle button, we basically deselect. What you can do is actually use shift, and if you hold shift and press A and hold A, you can see that select the whole edge loop like that, and then you can just draw it out. And if you hold down shift, you can see we can squish or expand the selection. So what you can do is actually have it exactly around somewhere maybe here, and remember the edges, so somewhere in here. So beveling, remember the beveling, and what you do is basically shape our topology around this base shape. So in here we're gonna stop it. So what I'm gonna do is basically continue only with these three edges, and then just like that, like that, like that, and then just go and little bit of a manual adjustment. So for this we can actually just go right between the very edge of it, since we're gonna subdivide it anyways. So in here you can see we can maybe insert another edge loop, but for that a little bit later. So now let's just make this. So in here we have to just follow this kind of you see the edge is actually sharpening like that. So this is gonna stay like that since we're gonna bevel it. One thing I wanted to pay your attention is to the, once you're inside the top build node, you can see there's actually modes. So I have it basically, if you, for me the hotkeys are basically 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. I can switch between them. So want to change them, just Control, Shift and Alt and press on any of them. You can see it's basically going to go inside here, and you can see all the shortcuts you can make, even for something like bridge, which is very useful because all of these commands basically you can give these shortcuts for it. But the main ones are in here. So let's say I want to split these polygons. You have to go inside the edge, the split, what's called, it's split. So for me it's 3. You can see we can now basically split any edge we want, and with the mouse scroll you can actually change the where we want to split them. You can see it's basically going to divide it evenly. So for me I just want one of them like that, and now we can go back to the one which is build, and I can just start making my topology again. So for this, what I want to do is actually create a very kind of a small polygons like that. because what we're going to do is actually extrude all of these edges, and then we're going to extrude it to give it depth. It's gonna make sense once you're actually gonna do it. So all I'm gonna do is just create a topology around it. So sometimes if you do not press on it, you can see it's actually going to start creating points. So there's actually, if you press just hold shift and delete, you can see it's basically going to delete all the points that do not have any geometry to it. So that's very useful. So I'm going to just make these polygons just before the kind of a before the curve starts for this grip, so something like this. So for this, just connect it, middle click on it, and then just connect it to here like that. Now let's finish up our base shape. So let's just start building this kind of a end of it. So like that. Let's make it here. So this is where we're gonna bevel it, the top of it. So let there be a little bit of room like that. And also in here we're gonna new polygons in here. So for this, first of all, what I'm gonna do is actually delete this one. So if you want to bevel all of this one, it's going to basically gonna get this edge. We won't bevel it more than that. So just select this one and press delete. So you can see once we're inside top of build and we select the edges and press delete, you can see it's basically going to change the tool and it won't put down a blast node. So that's one thing to note. So now just select these. Let's just move them out like that, and then just put them in their places like that. So this is ready for beveling. So we are gonna bevel it all up until this edge. So this is going to look very nice. For the top of it, what we can do is actually, let's put down a null node. If you want to see what's going on, you can just select null, and you can see there's going to be kind of a this shape which basically going to extrude, but that's going to be a little bit later. So all we really need to do is, what I want to do is just like these two and just follow this topology like that. Then just connect this in here, then just one by one. And if you can see, if you hover over the one point that is going to snap, you can actually then hold shift. You can hold shift, no, not shift, but left mouse button. You can see if you hover over that it snaps, and hold left mouse button, you can see it won't move the one that's snapped to the point like that. And then if you let go, it's basically going to create the topology like that. All you really want to do is just follow this kinda. As you can see that at some point it's going to start not work in our favor, so what I'm going to do is just move them by hand. If you can also use this smooth tool. For me it's 5. This is going to equalize all the quads, but make sure you do not hover over the one that you want to guide over, so because you're going to move all our points. So let's just select these, just move them around, shift delete if you put some points accidentally like that. Now for this end of it, we can actually, I just snap these 2 points in here also. Then we can do is actually delete this edge like that. So we're gonna bevel it very nicely. This doesn't really matter. There's a end gun here. Once we can subdivide it, it won't look too bad. So for this geometry, let's just make some preparation and show how where it's going to all come together. So first of all, we can also extrude all of these edges. So let's just select this edge loop and then just press on it and then shift click. Just start squishing it on both axes. And just put it somewhere. Maybe something like this. But we can also manually do this. So we can also put in the, what it's even called, we say a wireframe ghost mode if you want to see exactly where the lines are. Also you can use the brush tool. For me it's 4, and with the mouse scroll you can actually just more organically move multiple points if you want, without using just one point at a time, like that. Now, once we have our basic shape, so for the end of it, we will just extrude it and create this kind of crease around. So for that detail, we won't worry right now. But for the rest of it, we are basically ready to extrude and then bevel it. So what I want to do is actually create a group that I want to extrude. So for now, let's do not touch the bottom, because for the bottom, we actually want to extrude. Since we want to extrude both of these sides, and if we extrude it simultaneously, it won't work because there's going to be nasty polygons here because we're gonna extrude it at the same time. So we're just gonna extrude it one at a time and then just do a little bit of cleanup. But for now, let's select all the edges that we want to extrude that we won't have any problems with. Basically these, and then this, like that. So these are ones you want to extrude, then just go to the group and create a group. Let's call it to extrude, like that. Now let's put down the extrude node and select the group. And for us to actually extrude it only in a x-axis, all we have to do is select this transform extrude front, like that. And what's great about this, once we have set it up, we can actually procedurally after that change how actually thick we want this geometry to be. So if you're not sure how wide it has to be, we can always go and change it. So like that. So this is for our extrude, and now let's bevel it. And for the bevel, we actually want to bevel the same group, to extrude group, like that. In bevel node, we have to do a couple of things. First of all, we have to change the collision and limits to the never. So you can see, since we created these kind of edge stops, you can see it's basically going to bevel it up until the next edge is with collision to the next edge. You can see we are now getting very nice round shapes up until it collides. You can see in here it's basically stopped beveling, but in here you can see at the top where the polygons are very long, you can see it's still going to bevel it until it hits this point. So once we have done this, once we have got all the bevels up until the edges, what we can do is actually put down a fuse, because it actually won't fuse the points that it's collude. So let's put down fuse, and with the default you should just fuse them together and then just subdivide it. Let's take a look at geometry. So we can put it to 2 maybe. You can see we're now getting very nice geometry. So for the beveling, you can see we can change it a little bit, maybe. Let's just put it to 3, like that. Should be nice looking geometry for this. So, but one thing is to note that actually we do not have any roundness to this one, to this kind of shape. So what you can do actually, before we fuse them together, we can actually bend this geometry to get a little bit of a round shape. For our bend, let's do the bending actually just before the extrude. So before we actually extrude anything, after the poly draw node, let's put down a bend node. And for the bend node, you have to know only 3 buttons. It's basically B, N, and M. So M is changing the direction. The N is recapture the area. If you change the geometry, it's basically going to create the bounding box, update the bounding box for the geometry. And for the B, it's changing the axis. So we want to bend it on Y, like that. If you take a look how much we want to bend, we want only very subtle bend. So I'm going to just maybe 15-degree bend, like that. We have a little bit of bend, but of course now we have our slanted geometry. So what we can do, actually put down a transform, and then we can just rotate it back. But how much we want to actually rotate it back? It's actually, for the bending, it's basically the half of what we bended. So let's say we bended to 20, we want to transform it back to 10, like that. And to make this procedural, all we have to do is go to the bend and just copy the channel reference. Let's paste it inside the rotate, like that. And then just divide it by 2, like that. So if you take a look at our geometry and we go back to the bend and we start bending it more, you can see it's basically always going to follow, and both ends of it is going to be straight. So this is kind of a easy way we can get our bend like that. So for me, I'm going to make it at 20 for now. So after the bend, the poly extrude actually, you can see there's some problems for it. So for the transform space, make sure it's global, and let's put all the translate back to 0. So what we'll do is just on a x-axis, but you can see also that since we bent it, it's not straight right now. So what you can do is actually scale in. So now the scale is by default is 1, but if we put down to 0 scale, you can see now it's straight like that. So this, now we have fixed that one up. So the beveling is still the same, subdivision, all that. But you can see at the end we are getting very subtle bending of the geometry. So for the mirroring, we can also use Houdini's procedural tools. What we're going to do is after the fuse, what we have to do is put down a match size. So for the match size, what to do is justify x and put it to the max. It's basically going to be on x axis is going to sit right at the end of our first part, going to right at the center of the x axis. And then we have to put down the symmetrized node, lab symmetrized node, like that, and I have a preset for the mirror x, like that. Now we are basically mirroring the x-axis, like that. Now this is how our basic setup for the symmetrizing and all of that. Let's finish up this model. So first of all, let's go back to the fuse. Once we have fused, let's do the kind of the second pass for our extrudes and transforms. So first of all, we want to get this edge. So we're gonna just extrude it by 1. That will connect these edges. So this is going to be one group, and then for this one we want to also extrude these two. So we're gonna extrude and then connect the ends. And for the end, we want to, for the bottom of, we want to stay left it for now, because we don't really have the bottom of our object like that. So let's just create another group. So for this to extrude, just copy it, paste it, just call it to extrude 2, like that. And now what we do is basically repeat the same thing that we did. So then we extrude it. So for the extrude, actually, we can actually just let's just delete this one, and you can just copy the poly extrude that we just had and put it inside here. And for the group, just select the poly extrude to poly extrude 2, like that. You can see the result is that we are basically extruding the same width that we did with the first poly extrude, which is exactly what we want. So it's at the same place that we did the first extrude. And for this to be procedural, we can actually just go to the first poly extrude and copy the translate value as a reference and just paste inside this reference. So now if we change the extrude for our first extrude, like that, both of them are going to follow. So this is how we can actually change the width of it without changing the geometry. Now let's mark our passes for our geometry. So for the bend up until fuse, let's create a actual box. Let's call it first pass, and for the color just something like this, so we know where we did our first things and all of that. So For the match, after the match size, it's all the other ones. So let's just put down the box. So we basically now this is our cleanup for our geometry and symmetrizing, and this is actually what we do with the geometry. So for this, so now we have poly extruded. What we do is put down a poly draw, and with the poly draw, let's connect these edges first of all, like that. So for our second pass, we actually also extruded this one. So I'm thinking about maybe we shouldn't actually extrude it. So what I'm going to do is just go back to the group and just reselect the group. So like that. And for the poly extrude, it's still going to work since we have a group reference and not the edge and not the point reference, like that. And in our poly draw, you can see it's still connected in here, but since we didn't extrude this one, what I'm going to do is just select these three edges just to show the usefulness of this poly draw node. Just select this edge, and I'm just going to move this up until I reach this one, and then just click on left click button, and then just drag it until the next edge is connected to it. You can see now it's snapped also other one. So I'm going to release and do it again. So now it's snapped. Just leave it, let it go. Do it again for the next one, like that. And that's it. And for us to straighten out this selection, all we have to do is put Shift S. We can now straighten it out, like that. So this is going to be our second poly draw node. Now let's bevel out this edge. So for the poly bevel, we actually want to use the group reference. And for the group, let's select to extrude 2. Make sure it's never at this one and make it to the 2, because for the 2 we're gonna get this quad at the edge of it, like that. Then just make sure everything is selected, like that. Then just, so did we have a fuse in here? Okay, we don't have a fuse. Let's put down a fuse, like that. Now all we have to do is cap this end of our part. Now all we have to do is cap the end of the weapon part. So what I'm going to do is put down another poly draw node and select all edges but the last one on both sides, like that. And then just Shift and S to straighten out the selection. Now you have to take care of this creasing around. So you can see that crease is going around this until this part. So after the poly draw, let's just go outside this node and with the lasso select tool, just select the polygons that I want to extrude up until maybe here, like that. And let's just extrude them. So we could actually, let's add also divisions, maybe one division, like that. Let's take a look how it looks subdivided. So the crease looks fine. Here we have to put a bit of a crease, and also here, so this looks fine. So this is going to be our poly extrude. What you can do is actually just put down a poly draw. But you can see that we have poly draw before the extrude. So if we want to minimize our node amount, what you can do is basically combine these two methods. So before we cap this end, what we could do is we're gonna extrude before we cap it. So just move them in here, and we have reset all edits. And in poly draw, first of all, let's finish this one. Like that, Shift S. And what we're gonna do is just connect these edges that we want to be flush with the surface. So maybe somehow like that. So in here we can actually be a little bit of a slow in before this becomes flush with the surface. See, some of these points are not fused, but we're gonna put down a fuse right before we subdivide it. This one we definitely want to be fused. For the results, we're getting pretty good results with this kind of a easing in the flash surface. So First of all, let's finish up and clean up this geometry. Since we extruded, there's actually polygons on another side that we want to fuse. So from the poly draw, just select these polygons and start deleting them. And now let's create this kind of crease inside here. So for this, we can do with the same poly draw tool. Go to the second option, which is the edge slide option. So what you can do is just select some points or edges and then just slide them without affecting the actual geometry underneath. So what I want to do is actually move them. So let's take a look. So in here, then I want to swoop around like that. So you can see it's going to be a little, not too much geometry, but I think it can still work. Once we have guided our geometry, you can see that there's going to be a couple of problems with this. We have very long quads in here, so with the same topo build node, I'm going to actually create a different topology for this. So let's select this edge and delete it, and let's just cut it in here, an edge, like that, something like this, and then we could also maybe, let's just create another here, like that. This is going to be a little bit better for our edge looping. Now let's just select the edges that we want to create a crease on. Just hold Shift and A, like this. Actually, there's some points in here too, so let's delete them first. Now let's just select the edges that we want to get the crease on. And what I'm going to do is just use the bevel. So very small bevel and with only one division, like that. So before we actually extrude, we could, let's put down a poly draw node and let's just fix it up. Let's just move these points. And now what we can do is basically just, now that we have cleaned it up, what we can do is basically just select this edge loop and just extrude it. So let's extrude it for a small amount for now, like that. If you take a look at our subdivision, how it can look, see we're now getting very nice looking crease. So I did a little bit of a cleanup of our network. I just put them inside the logical boxes. So this is going to be our first bevel pass, the second one, and then all the creasing and extrudes, like that. So one last thing we can do before we mirror it is to create actually creases for both of these sides. So just select these and just bevel them. I just bevel them by one division. Since we extruded this part, it started to it's not aligning anymore, and also we extruded this part too also. So what you can do is just select all of these points that you want to straighten out, and then just press on W, and it's going to put down edit node. First of all, with the scale, just put down a 0 for the scale, and for the translate, all we have to do is reference our first translate that we just created, which was, so that was poly bevel and that was poly extrude. So this was our translate that we extruded the first time. So just copy it as a relative reference, go back to the edit, and paste it inside back. So now you can see all our points are back with the same part, and all of them are now aligned with the x-axis. For the last part, what we want to do is create this back detail. So the best idea is just to go back here and select these edges and press on delete, and then the blast node just delete non-selected. So now we have our detail that we can extrude from. So because we want to match the curvature of this object. Now with the blast node here, just pull extruded. Let's just go to transform extruded front and make it a little bit bigger. Scale it in, something like this. And also let's output back also. So first of all, since we're gonna mirror it, we want to delete these also. Let's delete the back of it, like that. And let's bevel out these for our sharp edges, since we're gonna subdivide it exactly the same way. So the bevel we can always change. Let's not make it too big. Just 2 is going to be absolutely fine, like that. And now we want to merge them back together. So hold down the bevel that we just did and edit. Hold out Alt, and now we have merged them back together. Only problem is that we all did our edits before these edits are after the edit node that straighten out all our points. So what I want to do is actually take this whole network and actually do it before the edit. Since in edit node we are not really doing anything with the geometry, we are not creating more points, it's going to be exactly the same. And now with the deselect the edit and like that. So I want our merge to be between these back of it and the poly bevel, like that, and then select it to the edit node, like that. But we have to reselect our points. So for our group, let's reselect it. So this is our result after all the operations. So what's cool about this, we can actually go and change the width of our object. So remember the very first poly extrude, which is basically translate. You see we can actually create it bigger or smaller, but at some point it's going to start to break. So something in the middle should be fine, like that. Since we had only one reference point for the geometry, obviously we could go even crazier with all the detail matching and all of that, but I think for now this video is already too long, so I hope you found this video useful, and see you next time, and take care.